I was a 24-year-old virgin. On my 24th birthday, I told my best friend Melanie that if I was still a virgin on my 25th birthday, I would kill myself. I realize that's a little extreme, but I was, it was like there was this party going on. People were having sex, and I wasn't, and I was missing the party, and I wanted to get on the boat. I was shy and quiet and terrified, and I didn't know how to get on the boat. So that summer, I was a school teacher in Brooklyn, and that summer I went to do there was this opportunity to do scientific expeditions with scientists. So I did this 2-week archaeological dig in Montana. I went to Montana, and it was in central Montana in the mountains, and I dug for 320 million year old shark fossils. And it was awesome. And I went, it was like I was living in New York City, but I was still like fresh and dewy and young. And I went to Montana, and there was like this scientist. He was this archaeologist from New York City, and he had big hair, and he was very serious about his project. And he had this nerdy assistant, and then there was this kind of quirky collection of people who were on this expedition. They had been there all summer, and I was there for the last 2 weeks. And then there was Paul. And Paul was the cook. Paul was the 19-year-old cook. And he was a local guy. And he would come every morning on his moped with a string of fish around his neck that he had just caught in the stream. And he would fry them up for breakfast. And then we would go off and work, and I was kind of quiet in this group, and we would go off into the mountains and break rock all day. We would just break rock looking for these 320 million year old sharks. And we found some sharks. Then we would come home at the end of the day, and Paul would be in the field chopping wood. And how I enjoyed watching Paul chop wood. And then Paul would make dinner, and we would have dinner, and the days went on like this. And there was one night when Paul invited us to, he had this little moped, and he was like, he invited us one at a time to ride to the plateau and watch the sunset. So one at a time, he took us up to the plateau to watch the sunset. And when it was my turn, I got on the back of the moped, and I wrapped my arms around his lean, lithe, muscular 19-year-old body, and I was thrilled to be on the moped with Paul. And we rode up to the plateau, and we watched the sunset. And then we rode back down. And the next few nights after that, I was the only one who wanted to go watch the sunset again. So me and Paul rode up to the plateau and watched the sunset. He was quiet, I was quiet, so we didn't do much talking, but we took this nightly ride to the plateau to watch the sunset. So anyway, the last night there, we have this bonfire, and we're all sitting around the fire, drinking prairie fires, which is a shot of tequila with Tabasco in it. And we're drinking prairie fires, and I'm sitting next to Paul, and there's this moment where somehow our hands touch. And there's coats and there's we've got coats and layers on, so our hands are touching underneath this coat, and I just feel like I'm on fire. And neither of us move. It's like our hands touch, and neither of us move, and our hands stay touching. And then slowly his fingers wrap around my fingers. And we just stay there for the whole bonfire. One hand is drinking prairie fires, and the other hand is just looped in this little fire happening here between our hands. And then the bonfire ends, and we all go to bed, and it's the last night, and I have to pack up my stuff, and I don't have a light, And so Paul says he has a lantern, and I could borrow his lantern. So I go to Paul's tent to borrow his lantern. And I don't leave Paul's tent. And another fire happens in the tent that night. I have to say it wasn't that fiery because I was new at this, he was new at this. But we got the job done. And then the next morning, as I watched him get dressed, I told him how much I enjoyed watching him chop wood. And so then it's like we're tearing down camp, and it's the end of the summer. Everybody's going home, so the whole day is tearing down camp. And Paul's out in the field chopping wood. And everybody's like, why is Paul chopping wood? We're going home. And I had this little secret. I knew why Paul was chopping wood. And then it was time to leave, and Paul drove me to the Greyhound bus station. And I got on the bus, and as the bus pulls out, I see him in his baby blue pickup and his cowboy hat and boots. And he waves, and I wave, and the bus pulls out, and I never see Paul again. But I write a postcard to Melanie, and I say, "It's okay, I can turn 25."